You're 27. You did what every teacher, every auntie, every politician told you to do. Study hard, stay out of trouble, collect degrees like armor, you speak languages, you interned, you played the game. And still, on Monday morning, you're refreshing a scheduling app to see if you have 12 hours of work this week, or 0. This is not a story about laziness. It's a story about design. Because Spain didn't simply fail its young people. It built a system where youth absorb the shocks, families hide the damage, and the future arrives late if it arrives at all. Start with the wall no one sees. In Spain, jobs come in two species, protected and disposable. If you're inside, you're safe. Your contract is heavy with rights, severance, paperwork, and fear. If you're outside, you're light, easy to hire, easier to drop, and who begins outside? Almost everyone under 30. So the economy grows and you get a short contract. Then it slows and nobody fires you. They just let the paper expire, no courtroom, no payout, no headline. 1 week you're employed, the next week you're invisible. How do you build a life on a ticking calendar? How do you rent an apartment when your income has an expiration date? How do you plan a child, a loan, even a dentist appointment when your employer won't promise you next month? Reforms come, speeches are made, graphs look better. Temporary contracts get renamed, restricted, reshaped. But instability doesn't disappear just because the label becomes permanent. A permanent job that only calls you when there's demand is still a life lived on standby. A contract can be forever, while your paycheck disappears for a season. Then there's the education paradox. For decades, families treated university like an escape hatch. After dictatorship and scarcity, education felt like control. So Spain produced graduates, smart, multilingual, ambitious. But the economy stayed addicted to sectors that don't need that many specialists. Tourism, retail, short-cycle construction, low-margin services. The result is a quiet cruelty called brain waste. You train a violinist and hand them a drum. You build a surgeon's hands and pay them to scan barcodes. Skills rust, confidence collapses, and when employers are flooded with applicants, they raise the entry price. A job that once needed a certificate now demands a master's, not because the work changed, but because the competition did. So young people keep studying. Another degree, another language, another course. It looks like ambition. Sometimes it's just delay, postponing the moment the market says, "This is all I have for you." Now zoom out. Spain is full of small firms, tiny boats on rough water. Many have fewer than 10 workers. Small can be beautiful. But small is also fragile. It limits productivity, it limits training, it limits research. A business surviving week to week can't invest like a giant, and without investment, wages hit a ceiling. Not because workers don't try, but because the engine is underpowered. Here's the twist. When Spanish talent competes globally, it often wins. Put a strong rower in a bathtub and call them unathletic. Then watch them win when you finally give them a real boat. And while wages stay low, housing climbs higher. Cities become trophies. Rent eats paychecks with a hunger that feels personal. The math is brutal. A young salary, an adult rent, and a gap filled by parents. Childhood bedrooms become waiting rooms for adulthood. You're grown but not free. This isn't inconvenience, it's a chain reaction. If you can't leave home, you can't form households. If you can't form households, you postpone children. If you postpone children, the population ages faster. And Spain is already aging. Longer lives, fewer births. A widening imbalance. Here's the cold equation. Pensions are paid by today's workers. When the worker base shrinks and retirees grow, the strain builds quietly until something snaps. Taxes rise, benefits fall, debt swells. And politically, the larger, older voting bloc is louder. The younger bloc is exhausted. So the system protects the past even as the future leaks away. Because the young do have an exit hatch, it's an airport gate. Spain educates a nurse, an engineer, a doctor, and then watches them pay taxes somewhere else. Not betrayal, arithmetic. If the same job pays double abroad with stability, what are you supposed to do? Stay for pride? Or leave to survive? And as locals leave, outsiders arrive. Remote workers with foreign salaries discover Spanish sunlight. They bring spending. They also bring bidding power. Landlords don't need to hate locals to displace them. They only need to follow the higher number. The city becomes a product. The locals become staff. So why isn't everything exploding? Because Spain has two shock absorbers, family, and the shadow economy, cash work, unofficial gigs, favors. Side jobs, it keeps people afloat. It also keeps the crisis quiet. Pain becomes private. Anger becomes quiet. Over time, psychology shifts. When the future feels blocked, the present gets louder. Small pleasures replace big plans. A weekend trip, a crowded terrace, a phone on installments. It looks like celebration. Often, it's coping. If saving for a home feels like saving for another planet, why not spend on something you can touch today? So what does Spain's youth crisis really mean? It means a country can be safe and beautiful and still bleed from the inside. It means growth can appear on paper while potential drains away. It means you cannot keep eating tomorrow to protect yesterday. Spain is not alone. It's an early warning where housing outruns wages, where permanent work becomes rare, where education stops being a ladder and becomes a treadmill. Young people will adapt. They already have. The real question is whether the system will. Fixing it isn't one lever. It's many, and each one angers someone. Make hiring easier. Insiders fear losing protection. Build housing faster. Owners fear falling prices. Push firms to scale. Small businesses fear being swallowed. But doing nothing has a cost that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. It shows up in delayed weddings, empty nurseries, quiet departures, and a generation that feels almost started. Imagine two Spains, one where a first job is a doorway, not a trap, where a contract means a calendar you can trust, where rent is a fraction, not a sentence. The other Spain is already sliding into view. Older, tighter, more dependent on visitors, with fewer young voices to keep it alive. Which Spain is being built right now. Because if nothing changes, Spain risks becoming a postcard nation, sunny, charming, affordable for visitors, and unbearable for the people born there. A place where the cafes are full, the streets are lively, and an entire generation is missing. And if that happens, what exactly is left to inherit?